Okay, sorry about that. When you are working on your wife's old laptop because you're a poor college professor who cannot afford a new one, you will run out of space for your video at about the 7.5 minute mark. So after deleting some stuff that I don't need on this computer, I should be able to make it through the next 10 minutes of our review here. Okay, so where we left off, we had just covered the basic terms in Locke that I'm going to expect to see in your essay. And I believe I was explaining that you're going to see these same terms or applications of them appear in Silas Downer. This is really what I'm looking for from you in Downer. Can you connect the dots between Locke and Downer? So again, where Locke says we exist in something like a state of nature, show me how Downer is replicating that. When he talks about America being a land of milk and honey, when he talks about the wilderness situation and the need to provide a basic sort of food, clothing, and shelter set up for ourselves in this condition, that sounds a lot like what Locke was describing when he's talking about a primordial state of nature. Okay, so connect those dots for me. Downer not only believes that we're in some sort of conflict, which we'll get to here in a second, but that this conflict is not justifiable due to the fact that we need to provide basic self-protection or self-defense for ourselves in the colonies. Okay? So then the question becomes, if we exist in something like a state of nature, how can we show that something like a state of war is occurring? Okay? So then you need to review the items that we specifically reviewed in class from Silas Downer's essay. And we talked about a number of them. I think we put 7 on the board all together at the end of the day. Okay, go through your notes, memorize that list, and be able to explain it back to me in essay form. Right? A number of things on this list were things like they were limiting our trade. They were raiding our trade ships if we were trying to conduct sort of internal commerce between the colonies, right? So we couldn't trade with other nations from Europe, we couldn't trade with the Indian nations surrounding us, and we couldn't trade with ourselves, okay? So the inability to trade is really going to limit our commercial growth or the ability to take care of ourselves. In addition to trade, he talks about limits on manufacturing. I thought that the prohibition on the manufacture of nails was the single best example that we looked at in the entire course regarding why the state of nature was being infringed upon. If you can't build a nail to make a house to provide basic shelter for yourself, this is a tyrannical problem. Okay, and I think he does a good job of explaining that case. We have the iron ore that we need to make nails. But in order to make that nail, as I drew on the board that day, we have to go all the way over to England. They're going to tax it and profit off of it and then sell it back to us. When I talk about things from class that show a state of war, those Townsend duties are a great example. Paint and glass are essential basic commodities that you need to provide for yourself in a natural setting. Okay? Let's see here. What else does he talk about there? Things like a standing army is camped around us in order to scare us. We also talk about that from class, and we do a pretty good job of developing. Maybe this is a great place when we're starting to talk about things like the standing army, combine Downer and things that we talked about from class. The powder alarm. The plight to seize ammunition from not only the powder alarm in September, but the next April when he marches to Concord, and Lexington and Concord start the Revolutionary War. These are all really good examples which demonstrate that they were out to harm us. Seizing of ammunition in and around Boston, closing off the neck, the one road in and out to prohibit open and free transport of the people in and out of Boston. Okay. Let's see here. Guys, I know I'm forgetting something from this list regarding things that Downer mentions. There were 7 or 8 of them. You took good notes and you have the book, and I only have 10 minutes here. So do a little reviewing on your own. I'm giving you I'm giving you what the puzzle should look like when it's put together. Make sure you're doing your own due diligence here to to find all of the pieces that fit into these various components of the puzzle. Okay? If you don't have a list of like 7 things that Downer mentions which suggest that we have something like a state of war going on, you probably need to go back and read it again, or find it in your notes. Okay? How are we seeing something like a state of war out of the British? Sorry. How are we seeing something like a right of war being justified by the actions of the British? Well, here's where you need to talk about things like government based on consent. We are supposed to be part of a civil society. Downer complains very vehemently and thoroughly that the British are not treating us as equals, right? We are being treated as the subjects of subjects. It goes king, parliament, Englishman. But in our case, it's going king, parliament, Englishman, American colonies at the bottom. We cannot be the subjects of subjects. All Englishmen, which we were at the time, are subjects of the king and should have the ability, to pass laws in parliament, or to have a say in the laws that get passed in parliament. Okay? So why are we in a position of self-defense? Because though we live in a civil society, we are not being given a say in the laws that are being passed to our own detriment. Okay? So there's sort of a combination here of, it's these 3 things all go together in the case of the Americans. Why are the taxes unfair? Because we need them to live in we need the goods that are being taxed to live productively in a natural state. And we're not being given a say in these taxes. They're being enforced on us, and a standing army is making sure that we actually pay them. Okay? From class, again, make sure you are building in additional items here which would justify going to war with the British. I basically did this a second ago while we were talking about Downer. Make sure you're including important Townsend duties. I'd love to see a discussion of the Tea Party and the in response to the Tea Act. The coercive acts, the 3 coercive acts, which reduced Boston to a martial law. All freedoms are gone. I believe that may be about it. Okay. All right. So hopefully you've seen what I expect in this Locke and Downer essay between these 2 videos here. Okay. Why did we believe that rebellion was justified? Theoretically, what thought makes us think that we can rebel against the king? Okay. Locke's theory marches us through that, and I need to see the various components of it. If you can define each of these terms here, okay, freedom, equality, state of nature, law of nature, state of war, right of war, conscience, civil society, and rebellion, if you define them and connect them to the American story, to give me some practical elements as well. So not just theoretically, why did we believe it, but how can we connect the events on the ground to the theory that we're using to justify it? Okay? So I need to see the whole equation painted together in your essay. Okay? I mentioned this in class, but I really don't want to see